mark.
On your mark.
Get set.
Get set.
Now ready.
Ready, go.
Provocative, engaging, and usually quite a lady.
Okay, they're asking for it.
Deborah, go.
Well, the jury has spoken in the trial of Daniel Penny. Of course, Daniel Penny, he was facing a number of years in prison. Now, things shifted just a bit because the judge, he threw out the heavier charge of second-degree manslaughter, and for that he could have faced up to, I believe it was 15 years in prison. And the prosecutors, they approached the judge and they asked him to throw the heavier charge out and to go with the lesser charge. And you know what? It seems like that's kind of a shenanigan type of move that they made. You overcharge in the first place. And that's actually what happened in the case about Trayvon Martin. That was an overcharge. And they do that in the hopes that, well, we'll get rid of that charge that we know they won't convict on. We'll come back with a lesser charge, hoping that we will get a conviction. I think that's exactly what the prosecutors did, and the judge acquiesced and went right along with it. But kudos to the jury. They were deadlocked, apparently, with the heavy charge. But under the lesser charge, they were unanimous. No, they said not guilty. So Daniel Penny is a free man. He could have faced up to 4 years in prison. This is just one of those situations, and I want to say this is just germane to New York, and by that I mean somebody tries to help someone tries to defend themselves or to defend others, and they wind up in trouble. I want to say that's a New York thing, because we've seen Alvin Bragg, the DA there, bring charges against people who no charges should have been brought against them. And I don't think Daniel Penny's case was any different. But I do applaud the jury. Here is a brief recap of the day's events around this trial.
It is a case that has provoked very strong feelings and raised tough questions. But after 5 days of deliberations, this jury of 7 women and 5 men finally reached consensus. A jury in Manhattan finding Daniel Penny not guilty today, clearing the Marine veteran of any criminal wrongdoing for putting a man in this fatal chokehold on the subway last year. Some in the courtroom erupting in anger, others in relief, as crowds of demonstrators gathered outside reflecting the deep divisions the case has sparked. Penny's defenders casting the 26-year-old as a folk hero for protecting other subway riders who described Jordan Neely's behavior that day as frightening and threatening.
The whole train was freaked out.
While others view Neely's death as an indictment of a broken mental health system that failed to protect a vulnerable 30-year-old man, a former Michael Jackson impersonator, experiencing homelessness.
I just want to say, I miss my son. It hurts.
This video of Penny putting Neely in a chokehold for 6 minutes going viral. His defense team had argued at trial Penny didn't cause Neely's death, placing blame instead on a genetic condition, his struggles with mental illness and alleged drug use.
When you have someone repeatedly going through that system, that's a signature of failure.
The judge tossed out the top charge of manslaughter on Friday and sent jurors home after they said they were hopelessly deadlocked, returning today to deliberate for just a few hours on the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. The DA's office saying in a statement, quote, "The jury has now spoken. We respect their verdict." Laura Jarrett, NBC News, New York.
So Alvin Bragg accepts the verdict, and that's a good thing. It's the right thing to do. But the cynic in me tells me that he accepted the verdict because it was crystal clear. This jury was solid. This jury, they were not going to be moved. They were not going to be intimidated. They were just going to do the right thing. That's plain and simple. Listen to the evidence, weigh it out, and then make a decision. That's what they did. And I think it was easier for them to do that because the mood of the country really has changed. things have shifted. People were so afraid. They were so afraid to say what was really on their mind, to do what they really felt was the right thing to do if it went against the grain of the crowd, if it was perceived to be politically incorrect. I'll use that term. And so people just pretty much shut down. Nobody wanted fingers pointed at them. Nobody wanted to be attacked for doing what they felt was the right thing to do. We got a lot of that over the past 4 years. I'm not saying that this was politically motivated, but what I am saying, I think that there was a level of assuredness. If I make a decision based upon the evidence that I've heard, and if I truly believe that this is the right thing, I don't have to worry about retribution. I don't have to worry about that. Well, I don't think they really have to, but there are those out there who want to send the message that, oh, we've got plans for you for that decision.
Just like everybody else seeks justice on their own, just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes. People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
That seemingly angry voice belonged to Hawk Newsome. Hawk Newsome is the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, the New York City chapter, Greater New York chapter. He is the co-founder along with his sister. And I think she had something to say to this as well. So let's first take a listen to what she had to say.
I stand here heartbroken because I have to hug a father who knows that the murderer of his son will most likely go free, who has to look in the face of a jury that no matter the facts, no matter the expert witnesses, no matter the people yelling on that train that day to let Jordan go, you will kill him. They will not find a white man guilty of killing a black man in modern day America. This is no different than Jim Crow. This looks like a picture out of the picture book when you look at that anonymous jury. We have baby boomers who were there doing Jim Crow on this jury. We have young people who are looking at Daniel Penny as a hero. And what America is a hero, a killer. He didn't give a crap about Jordan. The medical examiner said Jordan turned purple. Yes, black people can turn purple when they're denied oxygen. Every lab report showed he died of asphyxiation. And that doesn't matter because they want to spare a white man the penalty of his crimes. America has not changed, and I hate to say it, it may never change. And people who keep asking, are we going to riot? Are we going to protest? Is that what's needed? Do glass have to break? Do cars have to burn for a black man to get justice in America? We can't show up with peace. We can't show up with facts. We can't show up with evidence and witness after witness. You give us nothing. And then you ask us to love this country. America hates black people, and we see it from that jury pool.
Now, that seemingly angry voice belongs to the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, the Greater New York chapter. She is the sister of the male voice that you heard, Hawk Newsome, that is Shavonna Newsome. Hawk Newsome and Shavonna Newsome. Now, you may be asking yourself, now, Deb, why would you say seemingly angry? Clearly, those two are very, very angry. No, they're not. They are not angry. What they're doing, they're posturing, they're putting on a show, if you will. If he's standing there and he did say, what about our black vigilantes? He doesn't mean it. But the reason I really wanted to bring that audio to this podcast is because it's something that I normally don't do. I typically ignore clowns like that. I really do. But I included that because it was actually rather refreshing. I watched the news after the verdict, and there was actually a small crowd, very vocal crowd, that was supporters of Hawk and Shavonna, his sisters. But they weren't just Black Lives Matters type. Those people that were there, and it looked like maybe less than 20 people, they looked like professional protesters. You had a couple of people out there, perhaps Palestinians, because the women had their headdress on, hijabs, and they were yelling and screaming. And then there was a couple of guys out there with the bullhorn who just looked, one guy who just looked like he just showed up to protest. My point being, there was not this large crowd of people who were prepared to riot, because essentially that's what they were calling for. And who knows what tomorrow may bring? They don't have that same sway that Black Lives Matter had after George Floyd. They don't have that now. After George Floyd, no. After Trayvon Martin, before that, no. They just don't have it anymore. And here again, I really think it's because the mood of the country has shifted. The people have said, you know what? We've been there. We've done that. Enough of this. And besides all of that, this was not murder. It resulted in a man's death, but I would say it wasn't a malicious event. It was a guy out to protect others on the subway. And New Yorkers know full and doggone well that riding the subway can be a hazard to your own life. In just a year, 20 people have been pushed in front of subway trains in New York. You had a PBS reporter who was punched in the face. You had someone recently pushed in front of a train. Thankfully, they survived. So knowing what people know, yeah, you're going to get people that say, you know what, this was horrible. But what the Newsoms are attempting to do is to get paid. It's really that plain and that simple. They are trying to get paid. Hawk Newsom, he's a former high school dropout. He then turned around. He went to college. He did well in college. He went to law school. He got a law degree. He worked in the Bronx in the DA's office, I do believe. And he carved a path for himself. But that wasn't good enough. He ran for office. He got 3% of the vote. He said, well, my agenda was just too radical. What some people have learned, if I scream loud enough, if I scream racism loud enough, even if the argument can't hold water, there are plenty of people who will dump tons of money into my pockets. And I imagine that New York being the largest city in America, and Black Lives Matter having raked in so much money after the George Floyd situation, they have to be angry. They have to be upset. If not angry, they really have to feel like, what happened? We missed it. We missed the big payday, because the founders of Black Lives Matter, we all know that story. They bought mansions. They really swelled their bank accounts with tons of money. They got a Netflix deal. I mean, it was endless. And nobody even audited or looked into the books. The government didn't say anything. Actually, the same thing happened with Black Lives Matter, the New York City chapter, the one that the Newsoms founded. They got into some financial trouble as well because their books were not in order. But they missed the big scores. So now they think this is a great opportunity. Just wanted to point that out. I'm pretty darn confident that we're not going to see cars being turned over across the country, not even in New York. I don't think we're going to see businesses with the windows being broken out and fire bombs being thrown and people looting. Now, I know there are some people who are itching to start looting, but the mood of the country has changed, and people are not going to stand for it. And all of this shutting down the police and defunding the police, those efforts, they have fizzled out. The people have spoken. Here we have another story that, yes, it is tragic, but in the grand scheme of things, just like with the Penny story, in the grand scheme of things, it's a good news story. And in this one, the police in Altoona, Pennsylvania, say that they have arrested a person who they believe he is the killer of the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. Now, of course, he's a suspect at this point, but they say there's so much evidence there. He had a 3D printed gun. There was a printed silencer. He had several fake IDs, a fake passport, on and on and on. I want you to take a listen to this report, and then I want to come back and just give you some observations. And by the way, the suspect is a 26-year-old by the name of Luigi Mangione, or Mangione if you prefer.
Investigators say a McDonald's employee in Altoona, Pennsylvania called police at around 9:15 a.m. today after recognizing the man in these photos who was eating at the restaurant.
Members of the Altoona Police Department arrested Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old male, on firearms charges.
Responding officers said Mangione was acting suspiciously and carrying a fraudulent U.S. passport, along with a fake ID police say was used to check into a New York City hostel before the shooting. Also in his possession, a mask and clothing like what the shooter was wearing, and a gun with a silencer.
The gun appears to be a ghost gun. May have been made on a 3D printer. The capability of firing a 9mm round.
Police say they also recovered a 3-page handwritten document critical of the healthcare industry.
We don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document, but it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
During the 6-day manhunt, investigators developed a detailed digital trail of the gunman's movements, including these photos. Police say they were taken just minutes after the murder as he made his escape from New York.
Our NYPD investigators combed through thousands of hours of video, followed up on hundreds of tips, and processed every bit of forensic evidence.
Mangione graduated as valedictorian from one of the top all-boys high schools in the country.
I'm honored to be speaking to you all today on behalf of the Gilman class of 2016.
Then he attended the University of Pennsylvania, where he joined a fraternity. His social media pages are filled with pictures of travel with family and friends, some of whom posted comments months before the shooting concerned about him. One writing, "Nobody has heard from you in months," and another, "I don't know if you're okay or just in a super isolated place."
You know, usually when we see people come out and they commit homicides, it's a growth into it. To start out with homicide and murder, premeditated murder, that's very rare.
So police say that he is being arraigned at this hour here in Pennsylvania, but that he will have to be extradited to New York to face those murder charges or whatever the DA decides. Here he's being held on an illegal gun charge. Nora?
There are still so many questions about the motive. Lilia Luciano, thank you so much.
If Luigi Mangione is the killer, and again, right now he is a suspect, he is highly thought to be the killer, however. But yes, he is a suspect. But if he is in fact the killer, then they're going to spend so much time exploring, trying to understand what motivated him. From what we've been able to kind of glean so far, it just appears that here was a guy who felt that corporate types, that maybe not even specifically the healthcare industry, but certainly corporate America has waged a war against the working class, has waged a war against the average American. That seems to be where they're going here. He had a manifesto. He reportedly praised Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. So there's more there. What we do know, of course, is that Mangione, he's a guy from a very privileged background. He went to high school at the Gilman School. He was the valedictorian, graduating number 1 in his class. And I was looking up that school, and it costs about $40,000 a year to attend. They actually have K through 12th grade there, and they offer tuition assistance there. But if you do not receive tuition assistance, your family is paying about $40,000 a year. He went to an Ivy League school. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. He actually received several degrees. It's been reported earlier. He had an engineering degree as well, which might explain if, in fact, the gun that was used was printed 3D, why, if you saw the video, he seemed to have had some trouble after firing each shot. So maybe that's because it was a 3D printed gun. It doesn't take, a big-hearted person to say that this is a tragedy, that a man who did nothing more than be the CEO of a company, a healthcare company, an insurance company, for him to be killed. You don't have to be a bleeding heart to know that this is a tragedy. You don't have to be someone that's a saint. You just have to be a decent person. You don't have to like the industry. You don't have to believe that they're right to feel compassion for him, for his family, for his loved ones. You don't have to be that. But you do have to be a pretty twisted person to be happy about his death. And this is a problem I'm having here. First, before I get into that, let me just say a little bit more about Mangione. It's a real possibility that he had some mental problems. And I know I mentioned this on a few of these stories that I've talked about. And that's because mental illness is a very huge issue in this country. It just is. I remember when President Bush #2 was in office, Barbara Bush, she cut a public service announcement where she said that 20% of Americans suffer from some form of mental illness. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that I believe that just because a person is mentally ill that they should not be punished. Yes, they should. But just like in the previous case with Jordan Neely, we're just letting too many mentally ill people slip right through the cracks. We know nothing about Luigi Mangione, but I'm thinking there has to be something wrong with you to seek out a person. I don't care if you hate the job that he's doing. You don't kill somebody because of it. But what I am suspecting, that again, if he is the killer, and if he was motivated by a hatred for corporations, we have to also look at our educational system. Because if you think about it, so much of what we see in terms of protests on our college campuses, comes from a very hard left perspective. We're raising up our students, our young people, to really have disdain, even hatred for the institutions of our country. And like it or not, our corporations, they are a lot of who we are. People work, things are produced. So, we can go through all of that. But be that as it may, it does not stop this hard left rhetoric from permeating throughout our schools. And it would not surprise me at all if this guy has been fed a steady dose of rhetoric that says that companies are bad, they're the enemies of America, capitalism is bad. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I have no evidence of that. But I'm just saying there is heavy indoctrination of socialist ideology, Marxist ideology. And if you get a person weak enough, they'll internalize that. They'll fully embrace it. And who knows, they just may act upon it thinking that they're going to dismantle capitalism. Now, what makes matters even worse, there are people out here who are celebrating the death of Brian Thompson. They think it's great. They think it's wonderful that this guy was killed, that he was shot down in cold blood on an American street. They think this is great.
Who are these sick people?
And it's not just some idiot who's sitting at his computer or who has his phone down in his basement thinking he's making a real statement or provoking people. No, it's not just people like that. There are people who have high name recognition, people who are educators, people who are journalists, who are proud, who are happy that this man was killed because he was a bad man and they don't like greedy corporations. I was pleased to see Chris Cuomo make a statement about this. Take a listen.
There are a lot of people who are happy about this. Yes, hiding in the nice anonymous dumpster fire that is Twitter. But show these tweets celebrating his death. Even people who call themselves journalists, Ken Klippenstein and Taylor Lorenz, tweeting about how bad a man he was the day he died. People had similar tweets wishing Trump had been killed as well. All right, well, I guess that's par for the course these days, but don't these people understand? Won't someone in their life, if these are their real names, explain to them? You are worse than what you oppose when you celebrate murder as a justifiable end for disagreement over policy. I mean, what the hell is going wrong here? Really crazy stuff.
Yeah, it really is crazy. You know, United Healthcare, they posted an online bereavement message about Brian Thompson. And from just a couple of days ago, they had over 77,000 laughing responses. I'm assuming laughing emojis. And then I was listening earlier today, that number has gone up over 10,000 laughing emojis, people happy, celebrating the death of a human being. That's crazy. I also saw this. Some guy by the name of Professor Zinkus, he's on X. Actually, he's a senior lecturer at Columbia School of Social Work. He's also an activist on racial justice, income equality, and climate justice. This is exactly what I'm talking about. In these schools, and actually in a lot of these elite schools, this is where you find the indoctrination full force, full throttle, and the students are consuming this, and the weaker ones may just act on it. But here's what this so-called Professor Zinkus posted. He said, and I quote, "Today, we mourn the death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, gunned down. Today, we mourn the deaths of the 68,000 Americans who needlessly die each year so that insurance company execs like Brian Thompson can become multimillionaires." And this is a professor who's being paid well, no doubt has tenure, at no risk at all of losing his job, and he's feeding this poison into our young people. I believe that insurance companies don't treat their customers very fairly. I think that they charge way too much and provide not enough coverage. I do think that. I'm just shopping for my insurance for 2025 right now. Yeah. But the answer is never, ever to go out and kill anybody for it. We all know that. But these people like Zinkus, these professors, he's been active with Occupy Wall Street, and the protest part does not bother me, not at all. He's a huge proponent for $15 an hour wages and all of those kinds of things. I have no problem with it. This is America. We can protest. But when we cross that line, even in a subtle way, when we talk about, well, I'm not going to say it directly, but you know the guy, what difference does it make? Look at all the people he killed. When you do that, all you're doing is contributing to the coarsening of American culture. And our last story on today's podcast, it's a mystery. It's about this spate of drones that have been seen flying over New Jersey, and actually in other places, but just recently, there have been a number of drones flying over New Jersey. And if you've seen the video, these are not like, drones that you or I might have. I have a drone, and man, it does not compare. In a relatively short period of time, these drones have been spotted over 12 counties in New Jersey. One was even seen flying over President-elect Trump's golf course in New Jersey. So what's going on here? What are we talking about? What are people seeing? Are we talking about unidentified aerial phenomenon? I think that's the term they use now for UFOs. I don't think so. But who knows? Are we talking about some spy operation from China? What are we talking about here? Is the military testing out some new drone system that they are not admitting to, that they don't want to talk about? Anything's possible. In this clip, We'll hear the opinion of a law enforcement guy and a 4-star general as to what is going on.
Tonight, the investigation into reports of small car-sized drones hovering over New York and New Jersey is deepening.
Oh, it's slowing down.
Tonight, authorities in Toms River, New Jersey, launching their own drone offensive for a closer look. Their eye in the sky, capturing one of the drones in motion.
You're not targeting or going after them, so to speak. Is there a methodology and reason why?
Well, right now we just want to identify what it is. The way it was explained, they're 2 feet bigger than our drones, or 2 times the size rather, so they're about 4 feet, and it looks like it's a fixed wing type craft. What concerns us mostly is that at this point nobody's seen any of these units taking off or landing.
This is a significant threat to U.S. national security.
Retired 4-star general and NBC News military analyst Barry McCaffrey tells NBC News there's good reason why local and federal agencies are treading carefully.
When you see something of this capacity, you wonder why it would be needed. What are they doing? It implies a heavy payload, and a heavy payload would be either something dangerous, a bomb, but in this case, surveillance of some sort.
Look what's back again. Same spot as last night.
Meanwhile, more sightings of the large drones continue to proliferate social media. New Jersey resident Michael Marciano capturing these images on Saturday.
Coming right above my house.
The FBI not commenting on the drone activity to NBC News, but setting up a tip line for people to report any sightings.
It's moving really fast now.
Growing concern as the mystery in the sky continues. George Solis, NBC News, Toms River, New Jersey.
Some residents have reported that the drones hover over their homes, and they have been seen flying in clusters of 6 or 7 at a time. And these are very large objects. As you heard in the piece, the wingspans are at least 4 feet. Some residents say they're more like 7 feet. So they're really large. And if they're flying in clusters, they have also been seen hovering over the New Jersey airport runway. And some medical emergency transport planes have been canceled because these objects, they have a red light at the front and I believe at the back. And when commercial planes have approached them, they cut the lights off. And then when the planes pass, they cut the lights back on, which is very, very dangerous. So again, we don't know what this is. If it's the military, then that's really irresponsible to be in the flight of a commercial plane. And then it would make the citizens very nervous, as many of them are, with the drones hovering over their home. And then why in clusters like that? 6 or 7 at a time they are flying. So it's a real possibility, I think, that this is some sort of foreign entity that's doing some sort of surveillance. That's very possible. Because we did have a series of balloons flying over the country 6 long days before we even shot it down. And that balloon that we shot down was 200 feet tall, just floating across America. If it is something from a foreign country, let's say China, then that's very brazen. But then again, maybe they've paid enough where they feel, hey, we could do what we want to do. We've paid to have access. So when it's all said and done, maybe that pardon that they say Biden may do for himself is both timely and necessary.